Welcome everyone to lesson 2 on our series on hermeneutics, Bible interpretation. Before you watch this first part, I wanted to give you some background. When I gave this lesson, it was in Nairobi, Kenya, and every student in the class spoke at least 2 languages, Swahili and English. Now, if you don't speak Swahili, don't worry about it. I still want you to watch this first part, which might seem strange because I begin by asking the students to translate some things from Swahili and into English, and also English back into Swahili. Now, if you don't speak Swahili, it's okay. I'm translate everything, and the purpose is not a lesson on Swahili English translation. The purpose is simply to show the challenges that arise anytime you translate anything, be it the Bible or anything else, from one language to the next. The different challenges that arise from that and how you manage those challenges. So this first part is going to be very important to watch because it'll give you a foundation for that, and I point out some examples. Even if you don't speak Swahili, it's okay because I translated that. I translate it for you, and also the point of that is not the language themselves being translated, it's the idea of translating or the process of translation and the challenges that come up when we do that. So that's going to be foundational when we look into the other issues that arise specifically from Bible translations, and then also understanding which Bible translation we should be using, and is there a so-called best translation that we should be using. All right, I hope this is helpful and enjoy. Welcome everyone. My name is Jason, and it is my privilege and blessing to be taking you through this church-based theological studies course on hermeneutics. In our first lesson, we learned where we receive, or how we received the 66 books of the Bible, the canonization of the Bible as we called it. We learned that we do, in fact, have the exact books that the Lord wants us to have. We do, in fact, have the Word of God, and we can fully trust that we have the exact 66 books, nothing more, nothing less than what we need and what God has given us. Today, in our second lesson, we're going to start talking about the issues involved in translating the Bible. So we mentioned this last time. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and there is a little bit of Aramaic mixed in a couple of books. And then the New Testament was written in Greek. So how do we now translate that into our modern day languages? So when we do a translation, there will be certain issues and challenges that will arise. Nothing that we can't overcome and understand or manage when we start translating the Bible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What are these issues and how do we manage it? And how then can we have full confidence in the translations that we have? So I'm actually really excited to teach this class to you all because I've never done this before with a group of students where everybody speaks at least 2 languages. So all of you are fluent in at least 2 languages, and some of you in 3 or even more. So I think because you already have this background and understanding how languages work, and you are able to fluently speak 2 languages, you understand some of the challenges that arise when you're trying to take a word from one language and put it into another. It's not nearly as easy or as simple as simply finding a dictionary definition for each language. So we're going to talk about that, but in terms of how it relates to receiving our Bibles and reading our Bibles, and then also how that even relates to Bible study. So it often comes up as people are looking at Bibles saying, which translation is the best? Which one should I use? Well, the answer to that is it depends, and we're going to look at why that answer is depends as we go through this lesson right now. So we're going to begin actually with a activity. And what I would like you to do is first begin completely by yourself. So don't talk to anybody when you do this first part. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few lines to translate, and then you are going to write that down on a piece of paper, or if you don't have a pen or paper, you can type it into your phone or something like that. Now, I am going to warn you that I learned my Swahili in Tanzania, which is a little bit different Swahili than is widely spoken here in Kenya. And not only that, I'm definitely not fluent or a master of the Kiswahili language, so I'm sorry if I made any mistakes or spelling errors or things like that. But I think overall, for our purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, this should go pretty well. So this is supposed to be a conversation here where you have 2 people speaking. In this case, you're going to have, let's just say, person 1 and person 2. The blue is a different person speaking. So what I would like you to do first is you're going to translate this and write it down on a piece of paper or on your phone. And then just give it a second. After everybody's done translating, go ahead and talk to some people around you and compare your translation. So here you're going to go from Kiswahili to English to Kizungu, and I was really curious to see, did you both translate this exactly the same? In other words, you're going to take this and you're going to translate it into English. Did you choose the exact same English words in the exact same order? So again, begin first. We're going to have somebody pause the video in just a moment. Begin first, translating it on your own, and then look around, and when everybody is finished, then go ahead and start comparing what you all have done, and then share that with each other. So pause the video now, please, and then go ahead and do what I asked. All right, so hopefully that shared, you were able to see some different answers there in terms of what people wrote there, and you're going to see what the point of me doing this is in just a moment. Okay, so first of all, let's look at this, because it might seem pretty straightforward, right? You have habari za asubuhi, right? And I'm guessing that many of you just translated that as, hey, good morning. And obviously you speak Kiswahili better than I do. Obviously that is what it means. But now think about that though. Is that literally, if you just take every single word there and you translated it very woodenly, very strictly, is that what it means? So in other words, take somebody like from me, I'm from the US, and when I first arrived in Tanzania, I didn't know a single word of Kiswahili. So maybe I would have like an English to Kiswahili dictionary, and I would look this up, and maybe I would say, oh, if somebody said this to me, or I'm reading this, maybe I would say something like, oh, the news of the morning, right? And that might sound funny, right? But again, maybe I had a Bible, a Kiswahili Bible, and I saw something that said habari njema, right? The good news. So I guess from that literal perspective, that very wooden translation, I wouldn't actually be that far off, right? Because I had habari za asubuhi, news of the morning. But obviously we know that that's not actually the correct sense of it, especially if we're trying to take this into how we would normally say this in English. It would simply be good morning, right? And then we have salama umeamkaje. Now, this is again very common when I was in Tanzania, how we would greet each other in the mornings, okay? And I think this is still a greeting used in Kenya when I use it when I'm speaking to Kenyans anyway. I hope people aren't thinking that I'm too odd in that regard. I do get a lot of people, as soon as I start speaking in Kiswahili with them, it doesn't take long before they ask me, did you study Swahili in Tanzania? Because it's probably my really bad accent or some of my word choice or my grammar, but they can definitely tell that I learned it someplace else. But this is my point. I'm very curious to see, how did you translate umeamkaje? Because what we could say is, well, how did you wake up? And obviously, yes, that would be correct, because when we're looking at, amka, that would be to wake up. But is that how we would actually say that in English? At least in the US, it's not very common at all. In fact, I've never heard anybody actually say, how did you wake up? What is very common, however, and pretty much what I say to my wife and my children every single day is, how did you sleep? Okay, but again, it's a little bit different when you go from country to country or culture to culture. This umeamkaje was far more common in Tanzania than, let's say, umelalaje, right? How did you sleep? This was just, how did you wake up? But again, maybe some of you translated that, how did you wake? But maybe some of you actually put, how did you sleep? And you were fitting that more into the more commonly used English. All right, let's keep going down here. Unaitwa nani? Well, how did you translate that? My guess is, who are you called? What are you called? Something like that. But again, some of you may have just said something like, what is your name? All right. Now, obviously, all of those very similar meanings. But if we were just going to look at this very strictly, here we have, who are you called, right? And you might say over here, I am called Jason. But if we were, depending on where we were and the type of English spoken, so for example, in the US, we definitely more common way to say is just simply, my name is Jason, or I am Jason, or it'd be pretty rare to say, I am called Jason. And especially over here, usually in at least American English, what we would be saying is, what are you called? Here, I really like how we do it in Kiswahili, because you're a person, right? Not what, but who are you called? But so I'm guessing that some of you, the way that you translate it, you had some differences, and some of you may have just had "who are you called," "what are your names," something along those, or "what is your name," something along those lines. Okay, same thing here. We have "karibu Jason" and then "unaka wapi." Even that, very, very common to say, here in Tanzania, asking them, "unaka wapi," where do you stay? I would definitely say, though, in the U.S. anyway, the more common English phrasing would be, "where do you live?" Very rarely are you going to hear somebody say, "where do you stay?" Now, again, there's no right or wrong in all of this. It really comes from what is the normal way that people speak in their culture. And this is what I'm trying to get across right now, is that translation can be a bit messy, right? So saying "unaka wapi" here in Kenya, no big deal. Everybody knows what you mean, right? Even saying in English to somebody like me, saying, "where do you stay?" Eventually that now sounds completely normal to me. But when I first landed here, that was an adjustment, because that was a phraseology that I was just not used to hearing. I was only used to hearing, where do you live? And again, I'm not trying to say one is wrong and the other is right. I'm just simply pointing out that depending on where you are, the type of English being spoken, the words, the words can vary a little bit when you do the translation. And I will say that this here, when I first landed in Tanzania, I learned "karibu" very, very quickly, right? Welcome. And I love this welcoming hospitality culture that we see in East Africa, here in Kenya and in Tanzania. But I was very confused once we started learning Swahili, and the first person that I heard said something like this: "Nakagigiri karibu na Razan Academy." And I was really confused because I was trying to translate this. Let's see, I stay in Gigiri, welcome, and Razan Academy. And I was just completely confused by that, right? So again, you had the same word that I was used to right here with karibu, but then now being used with karibu na, saying close to Razan Academy. And so again, you can see that languages here, they can be very complex. In one sense, it's two different lines. In one sense, karibu, for somebody like me who's not a native Kiswahili speaker, this was very challenging for me, because I thought that karibu was just going to be welcome. And now I see it and use it in a different sense, meaning near. Okay? All right, so what I would like you to do, I'm going to put up something else, but now we're going to go the other way. This time you're going to translate from English into Kiswahili on your own first. Then you're going to write it down, and either on your phone or on a piece of paper. When everybody's had a chance to do that, interact with one another, share your translations, and see if you came up with the exact same wording from going from English into Kiswahili. See if you had the exact same wording, or if it changed a little bit. And if it was a little bit different between you and the person you're talking to, talk about why. What made that different? And after you're done with that, unpause the video and come back. So let me switch the slide, and then here's the words in English, and let me move that over a bit. And so please go ahead and pause the video and then start translating this into Kiswahili, and then speaking with one another, and then come on back and hit play once you're done with that. Okay, so I hope that activity was interesting, that you were able to translate this into Kiswahili and then compare your translations. I'm guessing that there were definitely, obviously, some very close similarities, but there were probably a little bit of differences here. And again, why? Because it's not like math, right? Where there's just going to be one answer to this. There are different ways to express this. So you all are both you're fluent in both Kiswahili and English. And so it's not that you don't know the language, it's just different ways to express the meaning that comes about this. So let's look at this and some of the challenges now going the other way from English into Kiswahili. So here I wanted this specifically to come out with here, "Hi kids, welcome home." So we have like a mama talking to her children here. Well, why would I point this out? Well, my guess is you had something like "karibuni watoto," something like that, right? And just the "karibuni" versus "karibu," that's a challenge that not a challenge. That really brings out the limitations right here let me start this over again. You probably had "hi kids." I'm not sure how you did that. So "karibuni watoto," "habari watoto," and then "welcome home," "karibuni nyumbani." All right. But again, I'm sure that all of you say "karibuni" versus "karibu" because you saw this "kids" here. Well, how does that bring out a challenge in English? Well, because in English, the English speakers, the English language does not have a second person plural, right? What do I mean by that? You have you, if I just am talking to one person and I say, are you going to the store today? Right? That's second person singular. But what about second person plural? If there was a group of you, I would say, are you going to the store? And you just have to know from context or the situation that I mean the you plural. Now, some people, especially if you meet any Americans from the South, they might have something like saying y'all, right? Are y'all going to the store? And that's simply a contraction meaning you all, okay? But the nice part about Kiswahili is you can be more precise with Kiswahili than you can be when you speak English, because you can say karibuni nyumbani, and just from that, everybody knows that you're speaking to more than one person. Versus if this was just English and you just said welcome home, well, if that's all you had, you wouldn't know, am I speaking to one person or am I speaking to many or more than one at least? All right. So here you have more of this going on. In fact, I'm going to switch this because I want to bring out some of the differences here. How was your day? I'm very interested in knowing how you translated that part of it, because there's a lot of things, barileo, barizaleo, umeshindaje, right? There's a lot of ways that you could have expressed that. And again, not one is wrong, not one is right? There are just different ways to bring out that meaning. In other words, there are multiple ways that you could translate this sentiment of how was your day, and all of those ways would be correct. Okay. What about something like this? New books. We got some new books. That might seem pretty simple, but if you're going to say this in Kiswahili, then you had vitabu vipya, right? Well, why is that a big deal? Well, because if you literally put this in from English into Kiswahili, maybe you would have to say something. If you wanted to keep the word order the same, you'd have vipya vitabu, all right? Well, that's not the normal way that we would put things in Kiswahili. We would say vitabu vipya. So here, even the word order, to make some accommodations going from English to Kiswahili, it's not just the words. Now we're even talking about the word order. So we wouldn't say in English, we got some books new, just like we wouldn't say in Kiswahili, vipya vitabu, right? It was far more common to say vitabu vipya. So we would switch the word order there. Again, one language isn't right and one language isn't wrong. It's just how those languages work. And so when you're translating it, you do need to make some adaptations so that whoever, if you were translating this in Kiswahili, so that it would sound normal or sound the usual way to them in Kiswahili. Okay? I can't wait to see them. Now, I have that underlined there because, again, I wish I was here in person to learn from you, but I'm not sure. This is a very common expression in English, at least in the US, to say, I can't wait to see them. I can't wait to go on vacation. I can't wait to do whatever. But again, we don't literally mean I cannot wait to see you. I actually can. I am physically able to do that. So I'm curious to see, does this actually translate very well into Kiswahili, or is this more of just a saying in English that you would then translate into Kiswahili a different way, okay? I don't actually know the answer to that. I know how to literally translate into Kiswahili, but I don't know if I went up to a native speaker of the language and was just saying saying in Kiswahili, I can't wait to see them, if that would sound awkward or not. So when I see you next, you have to explain that to me. All right, same thing here. But can we eat first, please? The reason I have this here is because I'm curious to see, did you put in here how you translated please? So did you have something in there around like tafadhali? Because when I was in Tanzania, it was an interesting distinction that tafadhali was used more of like begging, like a kid would keep asking his parent, like, get me this toy, please, please, please get me this toy. But the more polite way that you'd be using it would be naomba. So lakini naomba kula kwanza, but can we eat first, please, right? Even though maybe here in Kenya or in other places that might sound a little awkward, like I am requesting or I am begging or something like that. But in Tanzania, that's how they brought out the please, versus the tafadhali might be reserved, like I said, if it was just continually asking someone and just almost nagging them to do that, okay? So I'm very curious to hear, how did you all translate into Kiswahili? Was it very literal with that? Did you make some sort of adaptation to it in order to make it sound better in Kiswahili? And then again, here we have another expression in English. Obviously, these children here coming home from school, they were not literally starving. They were not near death. This was just an expression that is used in English to say, I'm very, very hungry. So I'm curious to know, is there something that is a similar expression in Kiswahili would you use, or would it just simply be Nina njaa sana, something like that around there that you would use or change the language to convey, I'm extremely hungry. Again, coming down here, have some food. I really love, again, just the welcoming and the hospitality of Kenyan culture, East African culture in general. So asking someone to sit, karibu kiti, you're welcome to sit, have some food, karibu chakula. And so again, though, me coming from someone who is not a native speaker of Kiswahili, when I was first learning Kiswahili, hearing karibu chakula, I might think, welcome food, and I was like a little confused by that. But then I realized, no, this is part of the hospitality and the warmth of this culture and how you are so inviting to guests and welcoming them to do this. And so again, but if we were going to translate this literally and very, very strictly, going from this English and trying to keep this English phrase of have some food, how would you do that in Kiswahili? Would you keep that exactly the way it was, or would you say, something along the lines of karibu chakula? And then finally, what about this? To wash, right? So in English, there's just really just one word for wash. It's just wash, okay? So here you might have something like nawa mikono, right? And so the nawa going with the body parts of washing, you wouldn't have something around there of like osha, like you're washing the dishes, osho vyombo, right? And so there are more words in Kiswahili that makes this more precise in terms of what washing are you talking about. Just like up here in Kiswahili, we can be more precise talking about welcome to a group of people versus welcome to just one person. Karibuni versus just karibu. And so depending on the word or even the phrase, different precision can come out in the language. So again, just pointing out that it's not just simply going from Kiswahili to English or English to Kiswahili. The languages don't line up perfectly. And so in other words, in order to make it sound natural when people are speaking, there are different ways that you have to translate this. Otherwise, it can sound very, very awkward. Okay? All right. Now, we went from Kiswahili to English and then English to Kiswahili. Now I'm going to put up Kiswahili, but this is a very common way of when I lived in Tanzania. This is a pretty common example of I would come home on a Friday and see somebody who was older than me, maybe an older neighbor, and we would speak and we'd be talking about what we're going to do from the weekend. And I try to include some of the things that I think, you'll have to correct me when I see you, but I think are pretty unique to Tanzania. So the reason why I wanted to do this is because I wanted to see, it's still Kiswahili, but it's Kiswahili Tanzania versus Kiswahili Kenya. And so I want to show you that even the language, depending on what area you're using that language, there can even be challenges in that and how we understand each other. So I'm going to flip the slide and I'm going to do the exact same thing where you are going to translate it first on your own. You're going to go this time from Kiswahili to English. And then you're going to speak with one another, share your examples, compare, how did you translate it? How did I translate it? And then you'll come back, unpause the video, and then we'll continue with the lesson. So let me flip the slide. Go ahead, please, and pause this now, and then come back when you're finished. Okay, well, welcome back. And so what we have here is first beginning shikamo, and then marahaba hujambo. Well, here with the shikamo, this was very important. One of the very, very, very first lessons, I think it may have been on my first day of language school in Tanzania, because the greeting was so important that anybody older than you, their status in society didn't matter. It didn't matter if they held a lot of power or not. It didn't matter if they were rich or not. The way that you would show respect to someone older than you, even the president of Tanzania, if he came to someone who was older than him, would greet him with this shikamo. And here's the challenge. There is no exact English translation for that because the English language doesn't have something like that. So how do you convey that into English? It would be probably something along the lines of, I am offering you my respect, or I submit my respect to you. I am offering you the deepest respect. And then you come over here and you get the response, marahaba. Well, again, there is no very good English equivalent to that. This is simply the older person speaking now, saying, I accept your respect. This is the response to that you would expect to hear. But what do you do with that if you're reading this here and you're supposed to be translating that into English? It doesn't translate very well, okay? And then we come over here, and like I said, this will be at the end of the day. And this is very common in Tanzania, to ask somebody toward the end of the day, umeshindaje. Now again, if you were going to translate that very literally into English, it would just simply be, or something like, how did you win? How did you win the day? Even though day isn't in there, right? Well, again, in the typical common use of English, that expression doesn't come up. It comes up very little, if ever, right? I don't know if I've ever heard anybody in English saying, how did you win, other than talking about a sports game or something like that. However, it is very, very common to ask people at the end of the day. My wife, every time when I come home at the end of the day, every single time she asks me, how was your day? Well, this expression would convey that, umeshindaje. It conveys that, how was your day? How did everything go? But again, to literally translate that into English, it doesn't fit very well. You have to adjust it in order to make it sound more natural to an English speaker. Okay? And then we have this part here, and I really wish I was in the room for this to see how people, or to hear how people translated this. So, nimeshin vizuri utafanya nini wikendi hii. All right, nitapumzika na baadaye kulabata. Right. So I will rest, and then later kulabata. This I've learned, I actually said this for the first time here in Kenya when I first got up here, and people looked at me like I was just this crazy mzungu mchizi sana, right? Like, because they were saying, you're going to eat duck? That's just weird. Why are you going to do that? And then especially you get to this part, ndio, tutakulabata kwa mrija, right? Yeah, we will eat duck with a straw. Now, that sounds crazy when you think about it literally. But in Tanzania, at least where I was in Dar es Salaam, this was a very common way to say you were just going to relax this weekend, enjoy your time, not like partying or anything like that, but just relaxing and enjoying it, and enjoying time off from work and just having fun. And it was just a slang expression saying kulabata. And then here, this would be the full expression of it. Tuta kulabata kwa mrija, and then you would even have sometimes mpaka kuku aje nyumbani, until the chickens come home, right? Something like that would go along with that. And again, nobody literally was talking about eating duck through a straw. That was the expression being used to say that, yeah, we're going to relax, we're going to have a good time, we're just going to have fun and enjoy one another's company. So that's why I really wish I was here in class with you to be able to hear, what you did with something like that. Now, maybe you were familiar with that expression, you know what to do, but otherwise you can see, if you were putting this into commonly spoken English, you would never translate that literally. Otherwise, people would think you were just crazy, like how they looked at me when I first said this. And you would find a way to express that in another way, either another type of slang, or just saying like, yeah, we're just going to relax, enjoy one another's, enjoy the weekend, have a fun time, something like that, okay? So why did I have you go through all of this and connect with one another? What in the world does this have to do with translating the Bible and the challenges that can come up with that? Well, again, I'm so happy to have a group of students like you all who know how to speak multiple languages, because you get this next point, which is that when you have two different languages and you're translating, it's not like math where some things line up exactly, where you have something like 4 is equal to 4. Those are the exact same things. So for every word in Kiswahili, you have a perfect word for that to go in English, or from Greek into Kiswahili, or Greek into English. That's not the way languages work. So I had a professor who used this expression, which I'm very grateful for, and he said it's not like this math equation here. It's more like two different ships passing one another, okay? They're two different ships, they're similar, and so you do have that, but they're passing one another, but they're not the same thing. And so when we translate and we go from the Bible, if we go from the New Testament, from Greek into Kiswahili or from Greek into English, it's not always going to line up perfectly. It's going to cross this way. And there are different challenges that arise from that we have to account for. The other thing is that language and culture are embedded together. You can't separate them. Language is part of the culture. And since no two cultures are exactly the same, no two languages are exactly the same. And so that presents the challenge. How do we go from the culture of the New Testament or the culture of the Old Testament, which comes out in its language, and then be able to now put that into English, which is a different type of culture, or Kiswahili, which is a different type of culture, right? And we can actually learn quite a bit about cultures of the world from the unique parts about their language. So one of the things, again, I mentioned this before, I absolutely love the warmth and the hospitality of the Kenyan people, of the Tanzanian people, of East African, and pretty much all over Africa. Just the warmth and the hospitality and how you treat guests. So I think that really comes out in the language because, for example, in English, we draw distinctions, right? We have something like you have a guest, you have a foreigner, you have an immigrant, right? There's all these words with that. Yet in Kiswahili, just the beauty of this, you have a foreigner, you have a guest. There's really just one word that can cover both of those, mgeni, right? You're having guests, you're having wageni. And I think that is a beautiful picture of the warmth that you have in East African Kiswahili speakers. Here in Kenya, I feel so greeted and so welcome when I go into Kenyan homes, and just how kind and welcoming those are. And I think that really comes out in the Kiswahili language, where you have just mgeni, just one word. Yes, I am a foreigner, but I'm also your guest, and you just see that, and it's so welcoming that it comes across that. You can see other things like, I'm not sure if it carries over here to Kenyan Kiswahili, but in Tanzania, they had 3 different words for rice, right? So was the rice still growing and not harvested yet? Was it the rice that was uncooked on the shelf at the market? Or was it the rice that I'm actually eating? It's cooked and it's ready for me to eat. So 3 different words that in English, there's just one word, just rice, and it's all the same. And that really shows part of the farming culture, or the importance of rice and how that fits into the diet, how it's harvested and everything else. There's a lot of things that we can learn by the uniqueness of the different, by the unique parts of every language, okay? But when we go now into Bible translation and how we understand looking at the different translations of the Bible, it does present some challenges. They're challenges that we can manage, but it's something that we should learn about. So let's actually get into this now, because this answers the question I have often hear Christians say, why do we need so many different translations of the Bible? So if you go, why does there need to be so many different translations in English? Okay, there's multiple translations in Kiswahili. Like, why do we need that? Well, it's because, again, this idea, if you have 2 ships passing, there are different ways that are all correct to translate from one language into the next.